All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up, where we discuss the latest updates to .NET web development. I'm Daniel Roth, Principal Product Manager for ASP.NET Core and Blazor on the .NET team. And today I have three special guests. We've got the one and only John Galloway, Principal Product Manager on the .NET Community team. Welcome back, John.
Yes, happy to be here.
It's great to have you. We've also got Maddy Montaquila.
Yeah, nailed it.
For Aspire. Aspire is represented and in the house. Hello, Maddy.
Hello, Dan. Thanks for having me. Let me infiltrate your stuff.
Awesome. And then we also have Mads here. Mads Kristensen, a bonus guest, Principal Product Manager on the Visual Studio team. Welcome, Mads.
Thank you very much.
So it's been, I think, almost a month since we've had an ASP.NET community stand-up. And that's because of all the exciting events and releases that have been happening. There was GitHub Universe, .NET Conf, and Microsoft Ignite, all within just a few short weeks of each other. So we took a bit of a break to let you all have that time so you could watch all the cool sessions and note all the cool announcements and releases. And there have been so many releases. .NET 10 is now available, Aspire 13, Visual Studio 2026, GitHub Copilot updates. There's new Microsoft Foundry capabilities. Microsoft Agent Framework, I think, also just recently went out with a whole bunch of updates, and so much more. It's honestly a lot to absorb and to learn about. So what we thought we would do today is sort of release roundup. To help you get caught up on everything that's been going on in the .NET ecosystem. So we're going to focus specifically on the .NET releases that we announced at .NET Conf, and also talk about some of our favorite sessions, both from Microsoft and from the community. We want to hear about your main takeaways as well from the releases and the sessions. So please chime in the chat or in the comments so we can hear about your thoughts on the releases and the events that happened at .NET Conf. So that's going to be our release roundup today. So I thought I had to come, prepared to round up the releases and get them ready. I've got the hack on. I can't do that.
You have to wear it the whole show.
I have a question.
Yes.
Bring my tiny hand.
Oh yeah, Maddy with the extra fingers for typing. Right?
Yes.
Another 20 digits in there when you've got your tiny hands on. All right, so to start off, what we're going to do, so first of all, let me share my screen here. So if you're not fully caught up yet on .NET Conf, where you should go head over to .NETconf.net, okay? That's the .NET Conf website, and the event is over, but you can click on the YouTube link here, and that will take you to the .NET Conf 2025 playlist on the .NET channel on YouTube. And here's all the sessions, and there were tons of content. I think it was like, 3 days worth of sessions, John? Is that what we had? Both from Microsoft and from the community. So everything's available for you to watch for free. It's all right here. You're definitely going to want to check it out. You can see I've been making my way through all the sessions myself. And, I love this time of year because, .NET's a big framework, big platform. And there's always things that I learn about at this point in the release that I didn't know. I was like, oh, wow, we shipped that. That's amazing. New C# features, new framework features, and so on. So definitely start, making your way through this. This is a great opportunity to binge watch as much as you'd like. And then for .NET 10, which was released at .NET Conf, we have the .NET 10 announcement blog post, which is available on the .NET blog on Microsoft Dev Blog. So this covers the whole release. So that's the first release I thought we'd cover about what's new in .NET 10. And then Maddy's here. You're going to talk about Aspire, the new Aspire 13 release, and then just a bit. And then Mads and John will cover the latest Visual Studio 2026 release as well. So go ahead and get your questions in the comments, and we'll walk you through what our favorite things were from these releases. I feel like we should break out in song from the Sound of Music. These are a few of our favorite things. Lots to cover. Okay, so first of all, .NET 10. Let's talk about what's new in this latest release of the .NET 10 platform. We've talked a lot here on this community stand-up about what's been happening for specifically in ASP.NET Core and in Blazor. But of course, there's way more to .NET 10 than just the high-level web frameworks. There's a new version of C#. C# 14 is now available with the stack, which has new productivity features, new features to help with performance. We'll take a look at some of those. There's new performance improvements across the framework. If you haven't started perusing through Stephen Tobe's performance blog post, it's got 250 pages of performance and added to the stack. Lots of new performance, better use of memory, better use of your server and compute resources. And then we've got framework improvements for all the major workloads: web, cloud, mobile, cross-platform development with MAUI. And of course, this is a long-term support release. So .NET 10 is the latest LTS release. That means it has a full 3-year support lifecycle and will be the replacement long-term support release for .NET 8. .NET 8 has, I think, another year. It'll end support in November of 2026. So one of the things I thought I'd start out with showing you for .NET 10 that I thought was cool is the support for file-based apps. Like, this is a cool new thing in .NET 10. I'm sure some of you have probably seen this, but if you haven't, here I have just Visual Studio Code. I'm not even using Visual Studio, and all I've got is a single C# file. And this is all you need now in order to run a .NET C# application. I can just type in here, our standard console write line, and get Copilot to help me out there. Great, that's all I need. And then let's just, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the terminal, and let me get a new terminal up. There we go. How do I get over? Well, I'll just hop over here into the terminal, and let's go into that folder. And you can see all I've got is that single C# file, and I'm just going to .NET run hello CS, just like that. Okay, and that's going to compile that C# file and generate a little executable. And then when it's done, boom, hello world. That's it. One file is all you need. You don't need a CS proj. You don't need all the other artifacts. Simple and clean. There's even a shorter way to do it. You can just say .NET hello.cs, and that works as well. And that will also run the file. And this is actually really useful because it means that you can, like if you're a Unix or Linux style user and you know about shebangs, you can put a shebang at the top of the file and say that, here's where my .NET executable is, and you can make the C# file executable, and you can then just run the file itself as if it were an executable file on its own. And you might wonder, okay, well, that's great, but how do I do things like, package references, project references? There's a whole syntax in here where you do hash colon, I think is it? And then you can say I want to have a package reference. Like if I wanted to reference humanizers, I think a popular NuGet package, and you can specify the version right in here. 3.0.1, I think, is the latest. And then if I wanted to say console write line, the next .NET release is, and actually I need to do some string interpolation here, and then that's put in date time .now, add a year one, and then to make it human friendly, humanize, we'll take .NET types and turn them into human friendly text. And so they will take that, and hopefully that will turn that into some English prose. And then in Visual Studio, in Visual Studio Code, what you can do, and this one important thing you'll need to know to do this is if you have the C# extension installed, you'll need that. You'll need to search for file-based apps. And there's this preview setting right here that you'll need to enable. Make sure you've got that checked. The tooling for this in Visual Studio Code is still in preview, but it's being worked on. Hopefully will be stable soon.
So sorry to interrupt. File based with no hyphen, everybody must know it is file hyphen based apps. You have to tell Claudia.
Sorry, apologize. Yes,
it's not your fault, Dan. It's just I noticed it. I have to.
File based with a hyphen. Sure. Yes. Thank you, Maddy. And then you should be able to just F5. And if you F5, you can then select the file based app. No problem. File-based app, the debugger, and then you can just run it directly from Visual Studio Code. And let's see if that works. And so it's hello world. The next .NET release is 1 year from now. There's the humanizer version of that.
Cool.
Okay, so that's file-based apps. Super cool new feature in .NET 10.
I got to show this off as one of my demos at Ignite, and there's a lot of IT folks there, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" That was the first they'd seen it, and they were like, "This is incredible!" Yeah, so
super easy to get started with, and you can then use it for like scripting style scenarios, right? Like instead of like having to create PowerShell scripts and such, you might just write those things in C# code and have a little script that you just .NET execute the C# file. Super easy. And it's important to note that this is fully compiled. This is not an interpreter based model. There have been other similar projects in the .NET community that were more doing interpretation. This is actually compiling the C# file into a binary and executing it. That's how that's actually working under the hood. Okay, C# 14, also new in .NET 10. Lots of new things. Yeah, sorry.
So one, Maddy already answered it, but somebody was asking about VS 2026, and VS 2026 still requires. That's not the scenario there, right? It needs a CS.
Yeah, Visual Studio is still a project-based tool. Like if you just want to have loose files, like Visual Studio Code is sort of a loose file-based code editor, right? Visual Studio Code for .NET development is still very much project-centric. But what you can do is you can run .NET Project Convert on your, if you just have a file-based C# application, you can run .NET Project Convert using the CLI, and that will turn that file-based app into basically produce the CS project file for it, and then you can open up in Visual Studio that way.
Cool.
Yeah, I would like the way that Damien actually just put in the chat too. Like there is a ticket for getting support for file-based apps in VS. The reason it's not there right now is because it just wasn't something we really expected to take off the way that it took off. We talked about it a lot as like something for new people to .NET, and also for scripting purposes, right? And so if you're writing a script, you're probably in a command line first environment. The other thing I put in the chat, like I liken it to having a file-based app without a CS proj is like having server.js without a package JSON. Like you can do it all in one file, but at a certain point, most real apps are going to end up with a project file, except for Aspire, because Aspire has completely broken everything.
Yeah, there are cases where it makes sense on its own. I think there are cases where it stands on its own as a feature, like scripting and getting started. There are Aspire scenarios, but at some point, if you're building a large application with multi-project, lots of files, then using the traditional CS proj pattern is obviously still the way to go. Cool. All right, let's talk about C# 14. So tons of new features in the language. Here's a few highlights that were shown in the .NET Conf keynote. Like this one's great. This is the null conditional assignment. Like sometimes if you want to assign to a value, but it might be null, you always have to like put a if null check around it in order to make the compiler happy, just so that it knows like, yeah, you put the appropriate barrier to make sure you're not accidentally assigning to a null value. But now you can just go ahead and use the null conditional operators on the left-hand side. And when you do that, if it fails to check, then everything on the right-hand side just won't be executed. So you can have much terser syntax for assigning to values that may be null, just using the standard question mark dot style syntax. So that's super nice and clean. Also, when you're doing like auto properties, like everyone's familiar where you just define a property in C# with like just get and set, and you don't have to define the field because the compiler just takes care of that for you. But what if you actually need to add some logic, like you want to actually add some logic to the setter or something like that? Then you typically in the past would have to fall out of the auto property model and actually define the field and set it and get it and all that stuff, traditional C# property style. In C# 14, there's now a field keyword that you can use so that you can just refer to the auto-generated field from the compiler and basically stay in that auto property model when you're adding just a little bit of logic to your properties. So that's a nice productivity improvement. And then, of course, the real big one in C# 14 is the support for extension members. Like we've always had extension methods, but now you can define extension properties and extension static and instance methods by using these extension blocks. So if you want to like define, additional properties on IEnumerable of T, whatever the T source is, you can define an extension block and add extension, any type of extension member you'd like to those types. So that's pretty powerful feature. It's going to be interesting now to see all the like new functionality that starts to just light up on types as people extend them in interesting ways with new C# features. And there's of course a bunch of other really great C# 14 features as well. What I would encourage you to do is to go back to the .NET blog And there is actually a full blog post on C# 14, all the new features that you can read. And Dustin did a fantastic job in his .NET Conf session going through all the new C# 14 features. So definitely, go and check that out. On the performance front, we mentioned earlier the tome of performance, where he goes through every single pull request into and it's really actually just the runtime pull request. I think that's important. Like a lot of the upper layer stack performance improvements, like in Maui and in Blazor or aspnetcore, often don't get directly included in here. There's usually a separate aspnetcore blog post on the performance improvements at those layers of the stack. But at least for the runtime and the JIT and compiler, he goes through all of the big performance improvements. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of those, but a few highlights that are worth pointing out that are in the .NET 10 blog post. Like these, the JIT compiler enhancements for better inlining, method devirtualization, lots of hardware acceleration improvements for new instruction sets and better ARM64 support, faster native AOT support. And then the runtime has all these really cool new stack allocation strategies that make things much faster. If you watch Steven's, where is it? This one, yeah, Steven's .NET Conf session, he actually goes through a lot of these stack allocation improvements, comparing .NET Framework to .NET 9 to .NET 10, showing how things get not only faster, but the amount of memory that's being allocated just goes down to zero in many cases, because it's just leveraging the memory on the stack. So .NET Conf, .NET 10, way faster than any previous .NET release that we've done. Just upgrade and you get those performance improvements for free. John, were you going to say something? I thought I heard.
No, I was messing with my webcam and it went crazy, and so that was...
That's great. That's fine.
But Stephen did an amazing job on that. It was really great because, that is a very long blog post, and so it's really a nice thing for him to go through and pull out some highlights in under 30 minutes.
For the record, he started writing those blog posts pre-AI. I know people are like, he probably just generated the whole thing. No. This is these are handcrafted artisan.
He puts I work with him on this, and we have automation for the blog that pulls Markdown into the WordPress thing, and it breaks on his post every year. There's just so much content. So nice. he puts a ton of work and starts way early on it. Yeah.
All right, I know I'm already taking up more than my fair share for .NET 10. It's just that there's so much stuff. A couple other just really quick things. I want to call out the post-quantum cryptography work that's been done in .NET 10. If you've been following the world of quantum computing, things are getting interesting. We're getting more and more qubits that are available, more stable, better error correction. We're not quite to the point yet where you can use a quantum computer to break cryptography, but we want to be prepared and have .NET be ready for that world. I mean, there is this legitimate threat that people will harvest encrypted data, and then later, once quantum computing is available, then decrypt it all if it was encrypted using algorithms that aren't quantum computing resilient. So we've been doing the work, as now that the standards are starting to come in, to implement those cryptographic algorithms and make them available in .NET so that we are ready to protect your data and make things more secure. So I think that's super important work, obviously very technical and difficult to get right. And the .NET team works very hard to make sure that these cryptographic implementations are solid.
One thing to call out here too is that this was a coordination with the Windows team as well for the base APIs there. So this was something we coordinated this release with them.
Yeah, was it the next gen crypto APIs, right?
I don't know the name of it. I'll trust you.
I got it here. I got the Windows Crypto API Next Gen, the CNG APIs that are now available in Windows. I think they shipped just about the same time that we did .NET Conf. So if you've updated your Windows 11 box, you should have the new Windows 11 support for the post-quantum cryptography implementations. If you're not on Windows, then you'll need OpenSSL 3.5 or later to use the latest algorithms. Cool. A couple other quick things. Obviously for ASP.NET Core, we had a bunch of new stuff. So definitely check out Mike and Safia's talk on the new features in ASP.NET Core. There was also this guy that talked about Blazor stuff. Don't know who he is. Maybe it's worth watching. Don't know. But there's definitely some cool stuff with Blazor's new state persistence support. I think we've shown that a bit here as well. But you now have a first-class model for taking your Blazor components, persisting their state so you can rehydrate them later or resurrect them later, resume. That makes things better for scalability and for just a performance of your site. And then last thing was I have to get a shout out to the Maui folks. Like, I don't know, it's not as much web development, but if maybe we have some folks on the call that are doing like Blazor hybrid based applications or leveraging like JavaScript within their native mobile client mobile applications. Maui now has shipped their hybrid web view control, so that makes it easier to use JavaScript based user interfaces from within the Maui app that can then interop with the .NET subsystems. They also did a bunch of great work on safe areas for the latest mobile platforms. And they announced a partnership with Uno, which is a company that does a lot of work in the .NET ecosystem. They provide basically a cross-platform implementation of the WinUI development model. Uno is now doing a bunch of contributions and partnering with the Maui team to improve the Android support and also helping out with our Blazor WebAssembly support as well, the WebAssembly runtime support. So a great example of another big player in the .NET ecosystem really in investing in the stack. So here's the full release notes for .NET 10, way more than we can possibly cover even in the time that we have. So to go scroll through, check them all out. I've put all these links in the URL list for today. So you're going to want to, you can find all the resources there so you can do a deeper dive, a deeper read. One other thing about Maui that it's probably worth mentioning, I don't know, Maddy, didn't Maui also do some Aspire work as
did.
well? Maybe that's a segue into the world of Aspire 13.
So fancy. I know you can take the .NET out of Aspire, but you cannot take the Aspire out of .NET. This is my new post .NET Conf phrase. Oh my gosh. So TLDR, we shipped a new version of Aspire, a new major at Aspire. We changed at .NET Conf. We changed.
Don't take over our conference too, Maddy.
Aspire Conf 2026. I'm manifesting it. One of our marketing people came up to me after and was like, "Hey, so what is this about Aspire Conf?" And I was like, "I just said it. There are no plans." He was like, "You can't do that." And I go, "I did though." You heard it here first.
There should be one, Maddy.
yeah, I agree. Anyway, so .NET Conf, .NET 10 shipped. We also shipped Aspire 13. We changed the version number. We will only tell the story of why the version is 13 once, and it happened during the code party on day 1 of .NET Conf, so you can go back and watch that. But we wanted to break off of the .NET versioning because we are going to start revving out of band with .NET. And because it was confusing people, because Aspire you can use with any in support version of .NET, but by calling it Aspire 9 or 10, people thought they had to upgrade their entire .NET for their whole app to use the latest Aspire stuff, which isn't true. So that was why we changed the versioning. And we did a lot in 13, particularly outside of .NET. Which is part of this rebrand we've done where it's not .NET Aspire anymore, it's Aspire, because we built it for .NET developers who, we added in these features for if you have a JavaScript front end, or maybe like if you have Python here or there, and it kind of took off and has gone crazy polyglot. What we were hearing from customers, especially from our .NET customers, and I see a bunch of you in the chat that I know have had this, you're trying to get your team bought in to use .NET Aspire, and the JavaScript people were like, "I'm not using the .NET thing. I don't want to have to download Visual Studio. .NET is old." And all of us woke, enlightened .NET developers are like, "You guys are so wrong." But literally just the name was a turnoff. So we took .NET off the front of the name. It's just Aspire. And we did a bunch of work for Product Truth for that, right? So bringing up JavaScript and Python experiences to be as good as the existing ad project experience in Aspire, using file-based apps to create a single file app host. So you don't need to have the understanding of a solution or a CS proj to run an Aspire app. You can just have a single C# file, like as if it's a YAML but typed, right? And then we did a bunch of things to actually make Aspire better for .NET developers, including debugging in containers, more connection strings and certificate stuff. You can actually now get OTel from a .NET project running in a container, so you can test .NET publish locally. Crazy. And of course, AI, etc. So I'm going to share my screen at the stage. Oh no, I can't. Dan has to remove. And
I got you.
Sorry. Thank you. We totally overhauled deployment. We keep doing stuff. We're kind of crazy. This is the new template we shipped, which is notably not .net. It's actually got a lot of stuff in it. Let me create a new one. Scroll. I'm in my repos. I'm going to do Aspire New. Yeah, Sean in the chat, if Microsoft Azure was still called Windows Azure. I know, seriously. Like, this is exactly what we were talking about. Like, we were like, it feels bad to have to rename it just because of perception, but it's true. Okay, so what we have now in new, we simplified this a lot. We have the Blazor and minimal API starter, which is the same one we've had for the weather app and etc. And then we have a React front end and fast API Python backend. Enter the project name, Standup. Enter the output path. Yep, I'm gonna grab the latest service release. We have this new feature, dev localhost URLs. So something we heard a lot of was people want to save ports and use the same ports across different apps. And now we subclass the localhost, right? So the domain is actually different depending on the part of your app. Use Redis, sure. Same thing that you get in the VS templates. We've just pulled it to the CLI. And now I'll open this in VS Code so we can look at it. What am I doing? Open folder. Stand up. Don't look at my horrific things in my folder of demo apps. It's terrifying. So look at this. 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 This is an Aspire app. 3 things. Oh yeah, Damien is making the dev internal domain explanation correct. Yes, isolating assets such as cookies for the host name. I just like that. Yeah, he knows. Okay, so this is an Aspire app now. We have a singular C# file. We call it the single file app host, which is based on file-based app support in .NET 10. That guy has a little app host run JSON, which is kind of the next iteration of launch settings JSON for single file apps. You don't actually need this, but the reason we have it for the Aspire app host is because we want you to be able to run both under HTTPS and HTTP, and we want to wire up some environment variables to tell you that you're running in dev, that you have a dashboard with this endpoint. There's an MCP that we'll look at that endpoint. So that's why app host run JSON exists. If you want this fancy file nesting, it is a VS Code feature. It's literally called like nested files. I think I have to go into settings to find it. Settings, nested files. Yeah, use file nesting patterns. It's in here somewhere. You can turn it on. I didn't know this existed, and I built the Maui VS Code extension, and I had XAML and XAML CS files sitting next to each other for years and years in my file explorer until like 4 months ago. Damien was like, "Why don't you just turn on nested files?" And I was like, "That can't be real." I know. I was like opening Solution Explorer purely to have nested files. Turns out it's built into the extension. I mean, built into VS Code. Okay, JavaScript front end. Look at all this junk. Look at all this. Look at all these files. File. We've done so much work on our .NET templates and to make it not look like this. But this is just, yeah, whatever. And then Python, a little bit cleaner. And then our app host. And the app host is super simple. Add Unicorn, one of the new Python APIs we brought up, which is saying, hey, this is a Unicorn server app. Fast API is an implementation detail. It's just how it works. And with UV, which is going to automatically UV run, UV sync, when I Aspire run. And then add Vite app, the front end, which references the back end, waits for it to start. And we are publishing the app with container files. So the back end is going to have the front end as a static site built into the container that we actually deploy with Aspire. It is super awesome. Good
Maddy,
question from Andres. Andres? What is the purpose of the Aspire CLI? Would we want to eventually add stuff like databases or NuGets using it? Is there something in mind specifically? Great question. Yes. Part of the answer is yes. I think using it to kind of manage the Aspire app host is one of the intended reasons for it. The first reason we built it is to give you a consistent entry point, no matter what you are running from, whether that's VS or VS Code or Rider or just the CLI or some, I don't know, Notepad++ or Vim. Like, I don't care what you run from, any operating system, any editor. And that part of that is because, people who don't have VS can't go into VS and hit F5 on the play button. So C# DevKit can understand and respect Aspire, but the CLI is really the least common denominator. So that's what the first reason we built it. Then we started to use it as a way to abstract out common .NET isms that terrify people who don't know how .NET works, such as NuGet. And so we have, for the app host, right, we have the Aspire add command, add an integration. So I'm using the VS Code extension for Aspire, but it's the same thing as doing it in the CLI. And this will actually filter to aspire.hosting. or community toolkit.aspire.hosting, which are things I can put in my app host to then set up and provision or whatever things I need to orchestrate via my Aspire application. So for example, I'll put in, let's do Docker, because this dovetails nicely to deployment. So just adds it the way that we do #package with file-based apps, file-based apps. And now I'm able to, in my app host, say, hey, I want to deploy this as a Docker environment, Docker Compose environment. So .add Docker Compose environment. I'm going to give it a name. And now I can use the Aspire CLI to publish or deploy Docker up from this front end. I don't have to write the Docker Compose. I don't have to write the bicep if you're going to do like sort your directives. It's killing me. I know it added it there, Damien. It added it there. It added it there. We do need tooling support for it. I think it is kind of sad that our CLI added it at the top. Okay, so it published, it created the .n file I need. It created the Docker file to actually Docker up my UV app with that image, and then it's mounting the static files to app.static, and it creates the Docker Compose for it, just like that. Don't listen to Damien backseat driving. I'm need to. Thank you.
Maddy, the front-end JavaScript features that you showed there that are being used with a back-end Python application, like those can also be used with, like, if it was a aspnetcore backend as well, right? Like if you had a backend minimal API and all that stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, I think like one of the things we've been talking a little bit about is how do we, even further streamline that integration so that you take advantage of all the optimizations that aspnetcore can do around those static assets, like integrating with map static assets and so on.
Right.
So that those, it's not just with Python. Like if you're a front end, if you have an aspnetcore app that also has front end JavaScript, you can use that functionality as well.
Yeah. Let me be clear here, like, because some of the .NET folks, I had less panic about this than I expected. I thought a lot of people were going to be like, .NET is dying, Aspire doesn't care about it anymore. Most people actually, like I saw in the chat, were like, oh, no, this is good. You made my life easier. Now I can like totally gaslight people into using this, which was really right. But just to clear that up again, .NET is the premier Aspire experience. Like, we don't have service defaults, which are what turns on telemetry and health checks and logging and etc. Poly for resiliency. We don't have those for other platforms at this time. We have them as a template, but we don't have them as something that you can like pull in and use magically. And there's a lot of stuff that we're doing here, but .NET is kind of the premier experience for Aspire still. And you still have to write your integrations in C# if you want to customize it.
Well, I view it almost like this is our efforts to make it so that more of the developer community can take advantage of the awesomeness that is .NET, like yes. Being able to take advantage of C# as a language, being able to take advantage of all the awesome infrastructure that .NET provides for managing distributed apps, for dealing with open telemetry, for handling publishing. Like it's kind of spreading the love, as I guess the way I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Tizzalicious. The world runs on CLI, builds with VS Code, thinks .NET is Windows only and closed source. Horrific. 2026 is going to be brand hyping for sure. Faux show. So I want to show one thing really quick, because I know I'm already over time. in 13, we shipped an MCP that runs in the dashboard in preview because that's all the hotness. At build, we shipped a Copilot in the dashboard, so you can open the tab and Copilot lives in the dashboard. But MCPs didn't exist when we started building that, and they sure as hell hadn't caught on the way that they did in the last few months. So we went back to the drawing board. That is still there. That still works. I love that thing. But we added an MCP that runs as part of the dashboard. And then the first piece of feedback was, but if my app isn't running, the MCP doesn't work. And so in 13.1, which is shipping in a couple of weeks, we added the MCP into the CLI. And so you can do Aspire MCP init. This is behind a feature flag, but if you get the latest daily, you can grab it. I'm going to tell it to configure code to use the Aspire MCP. Sweet. And this just added an mcp.json folder and file to my Foundry project. John's like, oh my God, I haven't seen this yet. What is she about to show? Correct.
I'm always worried. We're ready to pull the plug on you at any minute, Maddy.
Yeah. All right. So
well, we're gonna good. 13.1 features.
I know. I can't keep 13 and 13.1 and 9.5 and whatever straight. I can't. Okay, so I just asked it, run my app and see if it's healthy. It is going to use this Aspire MCP server to list all of the resources. The app isn't running yet. Now it fails because it's like, hey, your app isn't running. But it was at least able to talk to the MCP, which is new. That's a good question. This is an MCP for Aspire within the context of your app. Meaning this is the way for this is an MCP that lives in your app that knows how to talk to Aspire through a series of tools, whether that's listing resources in their logs or restarting individual resources and executing commands. And it's just the coding agent, right? So you can let it play with all the other MCPs, which is the craziest demo, which I'm going to show. Okay. The app stopped. Why did the app stop? Did you stop it? Did you stop it? Okay. This is new. They added this. I don't know if this is still only in insiders, but it's very fancy. Okay. Restarted. Check the resources. Oh my gosh. No, this literally just worked.
Preview features.
Why? What are you upset about? Oh, maybe I'm not on the dailies. Hold on. Let me show another Aspire feature. Aspire update. You can now update your NuGet packages for your app host inline from the command line. Very fancy. Update. It's going to fix all of these. Yeah. Put the NuGet config so it has the nightly. La, 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 la. There we go. Okay. Let me stop it. Try again. I think I had to update. I don't actually know that that's true, but we'll see. Yeah. 10
Maddy,
seconds.
after the thing with the hyphen, like the lack of capital letters and periods, it's just like I don't know, like
I know.
this feels like there's just the double standard here someplace. I don't.
Okay, so let me make sure that this works. Oh yeah, no, it's running. Yeah. Standup dev localhost. There's my dev localhost domain. Whoa! We have these cute little new icons in 13, Pi and JS, because it's Python and JavaScript. Whoa. Okay. How we doing? Aspire run, check. There we go. Now it's going. It's healthy. Yay. So it can read everything that's going on in the app host, and it can interact with it. And one of my favorite demos lately is, no cloud involved. Good question. So this is on localhost. And this pulled and ran a Docker container that's running on Docker desktop or Podman or Rancher. I don't care what container runtime you use. But Docker is the one I have. And runs the native Python, Uvicorn, and NPM. Uvicorn and UV commands, and then NPM for the JavaScript stuff. What is so cool about this is if I go, can you get a screenshot of the front end? This is going to use another MCP I have, the Playwright MCP, to go open the app, interact with the DOM in the browser, and take a screenshot and send it to me. And because it just opened it on this page, sorry. And because it's using a coding agent, I can then ask it things like, oh, can you give me like a UI review? Or, oh, did you like implement this feature and test it? Because it can now see the logs in the UI and interact with it, etc. And I didn't do anything to hook Playwright up. The Playwright MCP just does this. Like, it's just magical. So here's my little screenshot. Whoa.
Nice.
Right on. Anyways, mic drop, Aspire, agentic dev. It's the future. We love .NET. We love Dan Roth. Join the subreddit.
And there's a new Aspire homepage, right? Like the aspire.dev is the new website.
Oh my God.
With the rebranding to expand the love to the whole developer world. There's now aspire.dev where you can find all the Aspire related.
We built a website. Yes, the Aspire dashboard is still Blazor. Good question.
Yeah.
The Aspire website, we wanted to eat our dog food, which is a Microsoft saying for use your own thing. We actually built this with something called Astro.js, and it is deployed via Aspire. So we are internal to Microsoft building, running this this website with Aspire and deploying it through our internal deployment mechanisms with Aspire. And it's JavaScript. Like the only .NET in it is literally the app host. So we are actually doing the thing. This is also the I don't know, toolkit, whatever, Astro, Starlight, everything. It is built literally for like developer tool docs, which was part of the reason we used it. We didn't have to like build any of these things. And look how pretty they are. Look, pretty. Look at how pretty it is. So anyways, but the dashboard is still Blazor. We stand Blazor.
Awesome.
Okay, now
Nice.
my
Thank you so much. All right, what about Visual Studio though? Like we've seen Visual Studio Code all over the place here, John.
All right, yeah, bring up my screen.
A real tool.
So I have some cool stuff to show off, and I had a list of questions I was going to ask Mads, and then I was like, oh, Mads want to join us. So Mads is welcome to grab the wheel at any time. But okay, so if we can bring up my screen, I guess I can do it. There you go. Okay, so first thing I just wanted to show is, number one, it launches super fast. So I'm going to bring up my MVC Music Store, get this pretty screen there, and it's just like, so I'm not sure I totally understand, but there's a lot of like parallelizing and like just smart offloading of things, right?
So I think one of my favorite demos from .NET Conf, Maz, was when you showed like a side-by-side of Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code loading.
Yeah.
And they load in the same amount of time.
So that's on my laptop, which is old, and it fully loads in 1.6 seconds on my machine. And I don't have a fast machine. I have like an old Surface Laptop 6, like what, 2-3 years old or whatever. So
and I don't remember when you did it. I don't remember when you did this, how much you like really loaded all the .NET C# stuff into Visual Studio Code. But like I know like with Visual Studio Code, it kind of cheats a little bit in terms of its initial startup in that like you don't really start loading all the .NET stuff until later. It delays a lot of that work that Visual Studio often would front load. And so I feel like it's almost actually even doing more because it's like you have a full .NET experience ready to go. I feel like with Visual Studio. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, we used to do like in Visual Studio, things would like, first we would show the shell, we would open up Visual Studio, and then you would see buttons come in, the status bar would show up. Like these UI elements would kind of pop in when Visual Studio was ready for it. And you'll see that in VS Code too. They're up and running, but things are still popping in after it's up and you can interact with it. So it's kind of a common scenario. We took a different approach with 2026 Visual Studio. We said, hey, if we can't start any buttons or logins or tool windows or anything up instantly, it's gone. So it was like we took a knife to a bunch of stuff. Wow. And we optimized like the Copilot window, the Solution Explorer, all types of tool windows that load on startup. And we optimized them so that they would start instantly. So instead of doing these kind of asynchronously loading things where we would show the tool window And then we would delegate to a background thread, the population of that tool window. Instead, we were like, hey, if it can't be up and visible immediately, we cannot show it on startup. And so that proved to be a really good mechanism to get the teams to really think hard about how they were doing things. And so we were able to parallelize a bunch of the stuff. So what John did right here, where he opened a solution as part of starting Visual Studio up, parsing of the solution file and the project structure and all that actually starts at the same time the Visual Studio itself is booting up, instead of waiting till afterwards. And so there's so much stuff being parallelized, and that's why the more CPU cores you've got, the faster Visual Studio will be.
Which, by the way, I'm running in a dev box here, and I have like 64 virtual cores. So, so one reason I want to show that I've got a few reasons I picked MVC Music Store. One is because I'm just fond of MVC Music Store. Secondly, this is a .NET framework app, and so I'm showing you that you don't need to only use 2026 on new stuff, right? This is a .NET framework app, and it's working. So like, and of course you can do side-by-side installation and stuff, but you don't only have to use for new apps. Number 3 is because we have built in here this modernize thing. So this brings up in the Copilot chat there. So it'll say, it looks and it says, hey, here's some things you can do. So number 1 with this is that it is like, this is Copilot, but it is optimized for modernizing your app. So there's some things you could do. You could upgrade to a newer version. You can also migrate to Azure, or you can do things like explore more modernization options, and it'll say like, hey, it can review for security issues or stuff like that, right? I'm not going to go through a whole modernization. I'll just kind of start what you would do here. So here it's saying upgrade to a newer version. I'm going to say, this is a chat, so I can say, it'll give you things in there, but I can go .NET 10 using a new branch called upgrade net, whatever here, so you can see me type. But so the idea is that it is interactive, right? So then it'll go through and it'll analyze. So the main things that I worked with folks on the VS team as I was kind of preparing some talks I did recently, and the main thing they were pointing out to me is that Visual Studio knows your application. Visual Studio is an amazing .NET optimized professional editor. It's an IDE, and it understands your solution. It understands .NET really well. It also understands things like performance, profiling, and all that kind of stuff. So here's, like I can say, continue. We have a whole, Matt Sokup did a whole session at .NET Conf and showed like the upgrade experience. So anyways, this will kind of walk you through. I've been doing talks like this over the past few years with our upgrade assistant, and it gets you started, but then you're on your own for things like upgrading static file references and, like going in and like changing bundling and all that annoying stuff, right? And it takes a while, and it's frustrating, and it's trial and error because it's static files. And so you run the app, like it'll compile, but it doesn't work yet, right? And so I really like this with this, so I can just say continue, this experience where it's iterative. And so it'll go through and do that. So anyways, I'm going to stop this. I want to show, this is optimized for MVC. But I actually like played with this and copied what it did. And I did a similar sort of demo at Ignite, where I took a web form sample and I like wrote a thing, and I said, use YARP and do this and do this. And I like tacked a Blazor front end and like was able to execute this. And this is a fully running like Blazor front end. So this whole like using GitHub Copilot to modernize apps is amazing. Another thing I wanted to show off is Two other things I wanted to show. Oops, one is this is near and dear to my heart. This is something that I saw in the that I wanted to do when I was doing when I was doing Burke-Learn's Blazor with Burke Holland, and we wanted to update some Sass to CSS, and we ran into an issue where we didn't have support for nested CSS, and moving from Sass to CSS without nesting was kind of a frustrating experience. And so this was something where I actually I found that there was an issue here, and then have been watching over time and kind of pinged a few people. And so anyhow, it was really cool to see that this is now supported in VS 2026. I'm so happy, Mads, when you updated me on that. So this is just nicely cleaned up. And so this is built in. So this is an example of something where there's tons and tons of, I don't know, Mads, you pointed out there were thousands of issues that were addressed.
Over 5,000 issues. Yeah.
So this is one where there wasn't a big blog post, but this is an example of so many developer features that are just this instead of this, right? It's just I'm going back a few, but that was the original, right? So it's just it's really nice to see that improvement.
One of the key things that we wanted to achieve was performance was one, but another one was the fundamentals or foundational features. So reduce paper cuts, add delighters, fix some of the bugs, tweak the things that you've been asking us to do for years. And some of them are really small. And so we've never really prioritized them, but for those of you who use Visual Studio, you might have noticed in the past 2-3 years, we've kind of switched our priorities to start looking at these type of tweaks. And 2026 is almost the culmination of that, where we've done more than we've ever done before. And so you'll see so many small things that, all combined is huge for your experience overall.
I know we showed the load time performance of the Visual Studio, but I know also a lot of people, I've seen a lot of comments on social media, people talking about the build time performance improvements, people talking about their builds being sped up by 20-25% just by upgrading.
Builds are faster, install is faster, typing is almost twice as fast. So it's something you don't really think about, but we think about it a lot. Typing in the editor has to be as fast and smooth as possible, and that is now 50% faster. If you're on like John is here, he's in a dev box, but if you're on any, Hyper-V, any RDP session that you got going on, you'll see Visual Studio being faster as well. You'll experience much less latency.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Because that's apparently, that's up to the app to decide how much it asks Windows and the RDP session to update. So how many pixels do you need to update every time you type a character is now reduced significantly. And so you'll see much reduced latency on any RDP, whether it's local Hyper-V or whatever, or it's DevBox in the cloud.
Nice. Very nice.
So it's across the board, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that. So as you were saying, that works for DevBox as well, right? That's just because I'm connected on RDP, which is one thing, Janiscu jumping in here with one thing. I don't have a demo on this, but that is, I was looking in the release notes. Where do we have? No.
Co-host. It's in the insiders.
Insiders, yeah. So I don't have a demo to show it off, but we have that hot reload and then Razor editor improvements. So yeah, anyhow, that's exciting. I don't know. We should schedule, Dan. We should do a show on that as that comes up now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we even had the Razor editor and compiler folks on the Standup not too long ago, where they showed the Razor co-hosting work, where the Razor language server is now co-hosted with the Roslyn language server, which dramatically speeds up the editor and also improves hot reload support in Visual Studio 2026. Interestingly, that it didn't actually land in Visual Studio 2026 GA. The stable release actually doesn't have co-hosting on anymore. We ended up having to move it into the Insiders version. We're planning to ship it now with I think it's the 18.3 update, the next major Insiders release of Visual Studio 2026. And one of the reasons for that is that there was some performance impact on non-Razor scenarios that were being in our performance benchmarking were being tripped. And the gatekeepers for Visual Studio Performance were like, hold on, like yes, this improves this hot reload scenario, but we have these other regressions that we also need to address. So that got identified kind of late in the release, and so we ended up having to push it out into the insiders version. But those have now since been fixed in the latest Visual Studio builds, and it's now back on track to ship in the next update. So if you want if you're wondering like where are the big Razor hot reload perf improvements, the co-hosting work, you'll need to be on Insiders Edition to see those. And I think it's just a testament actually to how seriously Visual Studio really is taking these performance improvements. Like we want to make sure that when we take 2 steps forward, we don't also take 1 step back.
Cool.
Can I take a couple of related questions?
Yeah.
So one is here, why the AI models in Visual Studio is different from VS Code. So we get this all the time. So usually you'll see like sometimes it's only a week difference when a new model comes out. It goes in VS Code first, and then a week later it's going to be in VS. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. And it's basically, there's several reasons, but one of them is that in Visual Studio, we wait for the capacity. They're basically testing capacity on VS Code as part of it. So sometimes you'll see a little triangle for each model. Say, oh, we're over capacity, so it's going to be slow or whatever. And so we're holding back a little bit because our segment is pro developers, professional C# and C++ developers. And so it's like they need to have a kind of good and reliable experience as much as we can provide. And so part of it is the capacity. There's other reasons too, but that's a major one. And we've changed. So the next question here is how rapid we release Visual Studio. We're actually changing it. So we used to release Visual Studio every quarter, and now we do it every month. And so you'll see we released 2026 in November. And you'll see here in December, we'll give you the first update. The December update to Visual Studio 2026 will land next week. And so every month you'll see an update. And so that's the same cadence as VS Code and others do. But it's not like we just do that one-time monthly update. We do a bunch of service releases. We do a lot of things we can centrally control, like how we open up for new models and all that. We can do that without you having to install an update to Visual Studio. So something we can control centrally and something require an update. And so we have, like every week, we actually do 4 releases. Now, they don't all apply to everybody. Let's say we have an update to some bug fix that we did for C++. Only if you have the C++ workload installed, you're going to get an update notification, right? So all these things don't apply to everybody all the time. But that's the cadence. So we can be really, really fast. We're very nimble, and we can release very often. So yes, the answer is we can definitely keep up with the future.
Very nice.
Awesome. I had a couple, I know we're at time. I had a couple of things I just wanted to shout out to. So like you called this blog post out. One other neat thing that I spoke with the team that did this at Ignite. So this is the app service managed instance. So if you've been delaying moving stuff to Azure because you're like, well, I need file access or registry access or to install specific things or, storage mount or RDP or whatever, this is a really cool workaround for that. So this app service managed instance announced there. There's a thing. And then another just neat call out thing, the Azure MCP server is now built into VS 2026. So also, I mean, there's so much stuff, but I was a little worried, and Dan, you were saying like, oh, do we have enough stuff? And then we're like, oh, how can we ever fit this near an hour?
Stuff got released. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're mostly just focusing today on the .NET Conf the announcements and deliverables, but of course there was tons of things that got announced at Microsoft Ignite around various service offerings and agentic development and all those things. So way more than we can cover here. But hopefully this gives people a taste of some of our favorite things that got released this month. To give them go give them a try, go kick the tires. So .NET 10 is obviously available. Install and start using. Strongly encourage you to start trying out Aspire with your aspnetcore and Blazor applications. And if you're doing even front-end JavaScript or Python, you can use Aspire for those too, because Aspire is now more than just .NET. It's a full polyglot distributed app platform. And of course, Visual Studio 2026. If you're not already on it, like you're definitely going to want to get on it. You'll get an immediate performance and speed boost just by upgrading your Visual Studio version, both in terms of being able to build your app and load your solutions, and just getting stuff done and leveraging all the new AI features. Great. Did you have one more, John? Go ahead.
One other thing to mention on 2026 that reminded me of when you were saying that is, and Mads, you can jump in if I say this slightly wrong, but there were changes in 2026 to separate out the way that build tools are managed. So it's much easier to adopt now. If you've got existing things, you don't have to worry about it breaking or changing the way your projects are built. Oh, you're muted, Mads.
A different way of saying that could be that, the IDE itself has been decoupled from your build tools and tool sets. So you can update Visual Studio itself and maintain your C# or C++ build tools, compilers, and all that on a separate update cadence. So you can just stay with whatever works for you from a compiler perspective. And when you're ready to, jump onto the later version, you can do that. And that's completely orthogonal from you staying on the latest and greatest Visual Studio version. So,
oh, wow, that's huge.
Pretty cool.
That's big. Yeah. Okay. All right. I know we're at time. I know there's probably more stuff we could share. And there was a ton of community talks that were at .NET Conf. We didn't even get a chance to go through, but there's some really great sessions from folks that, not from Microsoft, but just from the general .NET ecosystem and community. You should definitely go take a look at those and see all the cool things people are doing with .NET. We hope you enjoyed our release roundup. I'm sure we'll have more to share in the weeks ahead. And be sure to join us next week for our next community stand-up. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.